This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome in to episode number 28 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. Yes, it is me, yours truly, Vito, Jerome Chirco, alongside my sidekick, the Podfather, and that is Doc, John Macaroon. John, what's going on today?
Great stuff, Vito. Happy Tuesday to you. I think we're all fully recovered from the weekend that was. Big-time events, big-time parties. Now we're here ready to talk about the big Tiger news. The good thing is, I really thought you and I had said, what kind of news happens in the off-season? What kind of things would we talk about? Would we go every other week? Would we just do a weekly Tigers Talk podcast, just, bantering what we talk about? And the good thing is, with the off-season now, I'm kind of learning, hey, there's, the off-season signings, there's the players that go into arbitration, there's some pickups and moves during the winter meetings. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in the off-season when you're prepping for a show that I really didn't know about. So this is really kind of cool.
There's stuff to keep up with, and it seems like we've had fresh content to deliver almost every single week during the offseason, and in recent memory at least as well, because the past few Monday nights, including last night now, Monday, February 8th, we had big news coming out about the Tigers, and this past Monday, last night as it was now when this podcast is released on Wednesday, February 10th, it'll be 2 nights ago, so I'll say that 2 nights ago is when we heard the news about JD Martinez getting a 2-year deal, avoiding arbitration, and the Tigers have done that under Dave D, now under Al Avila, sufficiently every single time. Avoiding arbitration since 2001, I believe, when Dave D first took over as the big boss, the man in control there of the front office in Detroit for the Tigers. So he did it, Al Avila's done it, and he got JD Martinez paid, and pretty handsomely. But it could have been even more money that Martinez would have got to more money. We know that on the open market. But for his arbitration rate, he was going for 8. Tigers were saying, let's go with 6. That was reportedly the amount the Tigers were willing to go to with him, according to multiple reports. Martinez filed for the $8 million, though, as part of the arbitration process. So instead of going in the middle and compromising, really, you can say Martinez got more money, even though his first year, this new 2-year deal will pay him $6.75 million. So it's less in the first year. In the second year, he gets paid very well, much more than that, as he gets paid $11.75 million. So a $5 million increase in salary from year 1 to year 2 of this new 2-year deal for JD.
Now, just looking at it, they avoid arbitration. It looks like JD Martinez is a guy that's willing to negotiate with the organization in terms of, hey, saying, listen, I'm willing to help you guys out. Hey, take care of me as well. So they gave him a 2-year deal, and you said it yourself. He gets a lot more money in year 2, and he'll be 30 years old when he enters free agency, a year when he can collect. If he has 2 good years, he can get that 8-9-year deal that he's looking for. But just to back it up, do you think this is a smart move by both parties? When you look at it, it just looks at, it looks to be a win-win situation. JD gets a little bit more money. He gets some security now for the next couple years. The Tigers have some flexibility, not going way over the cap in terms of only paying him that $6.75 this year. And you get a guy that can be very productive. At that price, $18.5 million for some ball players is what they're getting paid each and every season. And this is what he's getting, $6.75 for one. And 18.5 for 2 years. So I really feel like Al Avila has made a nice move, and I think it's facilitated by the fact that JD wants to be a Tiger. He's happy here. It can be a winning culture, and he's willing to say, okay, I'm not going to break your guys' bankroll. I don't have to hold out, or I don't have to become malcontent or do things like that. He could have hired, he could have really been a stickler and said, I want this number, pay it, or we're going to have problems here. He didn't do that. And I think it's a win-win for both parties.
And on the open market, JD would have gotten like $12.5 million to $15 million per season. Like 2 years, $30 million for another 2-year deal, or 2 years, $40 million, with $20 million being the total per season. So he could have gotten much more per season if he was on the open market right now, with his age factor being taken into account as well, being younger than older. So that's a good thing for him as well. Would have been good, at least, in terms of him being on the open market, available to all teams to offer him contracts over 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and it would have been a long-term deal for him on the open market. Well, realistically, he still made out very well, even though the first year really benefits the Tigers, but the second year benefits JD a lot more. Then I would say even it benefits the Tigers. Tigers would have had to pay him, like I said, with a new deal, in that scenario where a new deal had to be negotiated, the Tigers would have had to pay him more than that $11.75 million that JD will make in year 2. So realistically, to sum it all up, it's a win-win for both sides because JD gets a pay increase and more than that $8 million that he filed for, remember, because he gets $11.75 in the second year. So in totality, over these 2 years, he's going to get paid more than what he would have gotten paid in 1 year in 2016 specifically, which would have been probably $7.5 million, and the Tigers and Martinez, his side would have reached that agreement. So compromised on probably $7 million. So that would have been probably the number they would have gotten for JD. Now he gets more than that, and really the same amount in the first year, and then 4.75 more than that in the second year in 2017 by the Tigers buying him out, buying out the 2 years of his arbitration. So I think the Tigers did it wisely because if they would have gone year to year, they might have gotten him for that 7.5, like I said, and compromising with Martinez and his side. But think about it, in year number 2 of his arbitration, which would have been 2017, he would have been due for an increase on that. So maybe instead of getting $11.75 million, he would have gotten north of $12 million if he would have hit close to 40 or over 40 home runs again. So I like the deal for JD as well, like I was kind of getting at, because he made $3 million, remember, in 2015. So still a pay increase for him, and the Tigers got him under market value, and probably even for next year. Especially, like I said, if he hits 40, around there, and more than that next year, he'll be worth $15 million, more than likely at least. So getting him for under 12 for next year, that's really a bargain for the Tigers, and that's why I like it for both sides, and that's why I think it's smart. In my smart or dumb, segment that I like to bring apart as part of this podcast, well, I would say instead of dumb, this is very smart, and very smart actually for both sides, Doc.
Yeah, now let me bring you some numbers here for the baseball geeks out there that are listening to this Tigers Talk podcast. In his 2 years with the Tigers, he's produced 61 home runs, 178 RBIs, 543 slugging percentage, .893 OPS, WAR. You know what his WAR was?
Give me the WAR, baby. I yearn for that WAR.
He posted a WAR of 8.8 with the Tigers, and last year was third in the American League with 15 outfield assists. And you look at those numbers and you say, okay, wow, this is a guy that Houston kind of basically just gave up on. We didn't have to trade significant pieces to get him. He showed up on our team, and with a minor adjustment in terms of his swing and looking at his potential, it was a steal. One of the steals for the Tigers that you can say, wow, they went to another organization, plucked him out, and took a guy that maybe the Houston Astros, and well, now it's not even an argument.
Not even a question.
They
passed up on him.
They made a huge mistake.
Yep.
Those are mistakes that get people fired. And if you looked at Houston's roster, they could have used a guy like JD last year. They could have used JD Martinez on that roster last year, and now we got him. We're the beneficiary, and he's now considered an integral piece in this Tigers lineup with Miguel Cabrera, with Upton, with Victor Martinez. He's going to be a guy that's counted upon now to produce. He got an extension, and now he's going to be called upon because, hey, in this business, what have you done for me lately? The past is the past, and the past is over. This year, you got to put up at least 30 home runs, got to put up 100 RBIs, he's got to be able to hit in clutch situations, and he's got to produce. That's it. Pressure's on now.
It is to perform, to get it done at a high rate, as high as he did with the 40 bombs, 38 last year. If he gets to 40, really that's the threshold now that people, I think, in determining expectations for him, they set that as his bar now. He's going to have to at least get to 38. He's got to do that, or he's going to be underachieving now from here on out going forward. And I wanted to say, too, you brought up the WAR, right? Being 7.8, you said, from baseball?
8.8.
You saw 8.8. I saw 7.8 on Baseball Reference. That might have been Fangraphs, which uses different stats or way to determine WAR. But anyways, still love that you actually brought it up, the WAR, because that's a big thing for analytical minds in baseball overall now. But if you look at the past 2 seasons only and disregard what he did in 2013 with the Stros, negative 1.3 WAR, it says according to Baseball Reference, well, the last 2 seasons, disregarding that, he's actually been worth or put up 9.2 wins above replacement. So about 4.5 WAR a year. If he does that, he's an all-star consistently, year in, year out. And that's what the Tigers fans, the Tigers front office brass expects now from JD Martinez going forward. He has to perform like an all-star caliber outfielder, and he can do it with the glove. Now it's about the bat as well, hitting for the average like he's shown the ability to, and especially the power. The power production has to be there from here on out. And I wanted to compare him, his numbers last year, comparable to the likes of Edwin Encarnacion, Albert Pujols, Carlos Gonzalez of the Rockies, Jose Bautista, Joey Bats of the Blue Jays, Mike Trout And then Josh Donaldson, the American League MVP last year. Close in home run numbers to all those prolific sluggers. And if you look at the salary of all those prolific sluggers that I just named off, Edwin, Encarnacion, Pujols, Cargo, Joey Bats, Mike Trout, Josh Donaldson, who just got a new deal, by the way, himself. Donaldson did. You'll see that these guys, if not all of them, almost all of them get paid more than what JD Martinez will earn now the next 2 years. Telling me that contract, once again, is really a bargain. And it gets him paid more than he did last year, only getting paid $3 million last year, but also a bargain for the Tigers and what they are paying him. And what, when you compare it to what they could have had to pay him if he was on the open market and receiving offers from all the 30 Major League Baseball clubs. Because, I mean, look at this. Just specifically looking at, like, Edwin Encarnacion to start off here. He's getting paid $43 million over 6 years. Now, that is, what is that? I mean, we can do some math here. Because not all these guys are actually getting paid more than JD. But obviously, they got longer contracts and a little bit more money in totality. And I'm going to do the math here. Yeah, so I mean, even Edwin Encarnacion on a bargain deal really for the Blue Jays, because this guy's hit right around 40 consistently now. Hit 39 last year, hit 34 the year before, 36 in 2013, and eclipsed that 40 home run number in 2012, hitting 42 bombs. So he's a 35-plus home run guy consistently. And he gets paid a little bit more than what JD will get paid now this year. But he's really not a good guy to compare JD to in terms of seeing how much more money guys with similar stat lines are getting paid right now. Because it really tells you, like I said, once again, it plays into my theory about how Martinez is getting paid. And nice for him, but it's a bargain for the Tigers. Pujols, Albert Pujols, another guy with comparable numbers last year. Hit 40 home runs, 2 more than JD. Well, guess how much more money Pujols is getting paid overall-wise? Well, remember, he got that 10-year deal, $240 million in totality. So look at that. What is that, $24 million per season about? Now, give or take a few, depending on what they're paying him, each season, it does differ, like, it does for JD now with this 2-year deal. And it does happen in contracts where they put in, well, the way they make these contracts, you can have different salary numbers per year, even though in totality it might be the $22 million price tag per season. So it's actually maybe a little bit less or a little bit more for him. And talking about Pujols in 2016 now specifically, still getting paid a lot more money than what JD Martinez is getting paid. And JD puts up as good a numbers and better WAR at this point because he does better defensively. Albert Pujols is a home run or nothing guy realistically now, who hits for a lower average than he used to, hitting only .244 last year, striking out not a ton, but when you look at it overall, his numbers have declined. Like I said, the average, the on-base percentage has really declined. He's no longer that average guy or that guy that gets on base at a high clip. So once again, JD realistically is more valuable. And with the glove, that's the difference maker as well when you look into WAR. And you see here, Albert Pujols last year, 3.1 WAR. The year before, 3.9 WAR. A 1.5 in 2013 only produced by Pujols. In his, his second year with the Halos. So he went down astronomically from his first year with the Halos in 2012 when he put up 4.8 to that 1.5 WAR mark in 2013. Then last year, barely 3. So this guy in JD Martinez is much more valuable in terms of the WAR as well than a guy like Albert Pujols. And one other guy I wanted to bring up, I'm going to bring up 2 other guys here, but Carlos Gonzalez, the outfielder who the Tigers were rumored to be interested in acquiring maybe earlier this offseason before they cashed in with Justin Upton to play left field. And you look at Cargo here. Last year, he put up the 40 home runs, okay? But once again, when you look at the WAR, guess what? His WAR lower than JD's last year. Only 3.1 last year for Cargo. A guy that gets hurt, too. At least a little bit more often than JD has up to this point. And then you look at what he gets paid per year, Carlos Gonzalez, 7 years, $80 million, signed through 2017. So he signed that contract, or he began in 2011, and now goes until 2017. But that's 7 years, $80 million in totality, meaning he's getting paid north of $10 million per season. Once again, JD Martinez making less, right? He is, per season right now. Officially going into this year, he's making less than what Cargo in that contract has made. And then Martinez, though, guess what? Better ball player, more valuable in terms of WAR. So once again, it plays into my theory on how the Tigers are getting a big-time bargain. And one other guy I wanted to look at, just to see, to kind of compare the two, and once again show off, or prove my case that JD has been a bargain for the Tigers here. Joey Bats, Jose Bautista of the Toronto Blue Jays. This great slugger, prolific slugger, right? Hit 40 bombs last year. This guy is not as comparable because he hits so well. He gets on base, too. And that's the difference maker. If these guys get on base, their WARs can be higher up there. JD does a pretty good job at that. But Jose Bautista, forget that, disregard that. The big thing about this is the contract, the salary number here. And with that being said, he gets paid once again more. 6 years, $78 million in totality. Signed in 2011, or the contract started then, goes until this season. So he's going to be a free agent after 2016. But he's made more money as well over those 6 years than what JD will get paid this coming season in 2016. And JD is younger than Jose Bautista, so JD's got some better years left in him. And if you look at the specific numbers for Joey Bats and what he's earning, well, 14 mil in 2016, 14 mil last year, the year before that. He's earned 14 mil consistently since 2012. And in his last year of the contract that he signed back then, 14 mil. And free agency, he'll be able to realize in 2017 and probably get paid handsomely. But he's older, paid more money. Once again, it proves my case, proves my theory to be true that, once again, JD Martinez, Doc, is a big-time bargain financially for the Tigers. No doubt about it. And after all that, I went on ad nauseum there about it to prove my point, but I think I did after that, 5-minute rant there about why, or 6-7-minute rant about why he's better and more valuable than all those guys that I named off.
And what's good is, Al Avila, remember, this is not his first rodeo. This is his first year being the general manager, but he sat in on meetings with Dave Dombrowski. You've said it. The Tigers haven't gone to arbitration with the players since 2001. So they've had to be creative in terms of, hey, getting these players locked in. And they've come through and negotiated a lot of deals. A lot of talent has left the Tigers, but a lot has also remained and signed on as well. So Al Avila deserves a lot of credit because, when the season starts, there's going to be a lot of criticism probably placed on him if this team doesn't win. But where we're at now, in early February, just ahead of spring training, I know the team is now loading up the buses and getting ready. Pitchers and catchers are going to report. Vito, February 29th, I believe, is the first exhibition game. Are you serious? In this month? But Al Avila, as we sit here now, is doing a great job. And you can see, okay, this guy has some moxie in that he's getting players that we could definitely use to help this team win. And so far, so good. I've been happy with Al Avila. And so far, when you look at the moves made, you can say, okay, compared to 2015 on paper, this 2016 roster can do some things to maybe help. Because at this podcast, we want to help people. We want to help keep Brad Ausmus. We're going to start the Keep Brad Alive, the Keep Brad Alive movement. And so far, so good. In terms of keeping Brad alive, Al Avila's done a good job. Because do you really think, and actually we could do a little segment here, a little quick poll here between you and I. If someone gets fired in 2016, you think it would be Caldwell or Brad Ausmus? Could be a push.
I think Ausmus.
Both.
Well, I think Ausmus has to go. But I'm not as big of a Lions fan. So for me, I could care less what they do to a certain degree. But I could see Caldwell getting fired too. So really, they both could go. So that's really not.
It could be a hatchet year.
It might be a push. It's about 50-50 there.
You think Brad Ausmus survives this year with what they got?
Well, they got to win. They got to win like 85-plus games for him to survive. If they don't win, if they don't finish above 500, for sure he's gone. So, and they can't get off to a slow start. I think if they get off to a slow start, I think he's gone too. I think they go to Lloyd McClendon then. They give him the interim tag. I think he's that interim guy in waiting. If Ausmus struggles and screws up astronomically, I think he's gone early on. I think by the All-Star break, he's gone then. Because they're not going to mess around like they did last year. Mike Ilitch wanted him gone, remember. Dave D didn't want to fire him. Brad Ausmus was Dave D's man. Brad Ausmus isn't totally Al Avila's man as much as he was Dave D's man. So I think he'll go much more easily, than, last year when Dave D protected his behind numerous times and saved him his job. So I think that could be a push big time there between him and Caldwell. And I think both could be fired by the end of next season. But really quick, I wanted to note, too, with the WAR factor, JD, the 5 WAR. So Jose Bautista finished only 0.1 above him. Edwin Encarnacion finished with less WAR. So two big matches there. Like I said, making at least a little bit more money there. And Bautista older. Edwin Encarnacion older. And JD Martinez, comparable with the WAR, comparable home run and stats as a whole for JD. And he's getting paid cheaper. He's more of a bargain, to sum it up once again, than those two guys. And then Albert Pujols and also Carlos Gonzalez. So I like the deal. It was smart for the Tigers and also smart for JD Martinez to cash in with this deal.
I don't know. Did you validate my point enough? I know I'm checking a lot of stats here on Tigers, but I didn't get the vibe of that you validated my point enough. Did I make a good point?
About
Al Avila, that he's doing a great job with in terms of bringing on some good talent here.
Bringing on the right talent, making some shrewd moves.
Okay.
He has. Well, I love him.
Oh, you do?
I don't know if I love him. we talked about it. I don't know if I loved him retaining Brad Ausmus, but I think he might be shown the door, like I said, much more easily than he would have last year. This is year 3, the final year of his contract. This is, put up or shut up, right? He has to perform, get his team to perform, and like I said, win, I think 85 at least games, probably more than 85, and he won't survive if they finish below 500.
See, and doing the one-on-one podcast, I'm getting used to hearing great question or great point or
great analysis and great insight. I'll say it now to make you feel good. There you go.
See, I felt it. That much better. Thank you, Vito. Okay, carry on.
I can suck up to you a little bit to make you feel good, and you're the podfather, so I have to. I have to know that, hey, I'm held accountable for that at times. So there we go. That's my validity or my expressing of validity to your analysis there about Al Avila. But he has been the man. But still, with that being said, I just looked up the odds recently, and this might have been maybe not the most recent odds, but I saw 27-1 for the Tigers to win the World Series. Those are not extremely long odds, but they're not great odds for the Tigers either. Kind of being unheralded, underrated maybe a little bit, and going under the radar then. So playing that dark horse now, being able to play that dark horse character, the Tigers are now going into 2016. How much could that help them out? I think it's smart to say it could help them out a lot more than it has, or than the odds when the odds have been much higher, much greater for them to win. They have been in recent memory. Now this year, much more under the radar. I think those odds of being 27-1 or right around that range, according to Vegas, I think with that being said, I think those odds help out the Tigers. I think they're better off being the underdog going into the season.
And some projections that I read, I think on ESPN, have the Tigers finishing last in the division still with the moves that they made. And they're citing that the pitching could be inconsistent. They're citing the fact of the older players. And they're still kind of going off a little bit of last year and in terms of what Brad Ausmus brings to the table. But I'm kind of surprised. I really don't get the vibe that this is another year of a last place team. I don't get that vibe. I feel like they're going to be contending right up until the end of the season and playing some meaningful games in September. What are the odds you think, what are the chances, what are the odds that the Tigers are playing meaningful games to try to get into the postseason, win the division in September?
I think if the stat lines of the guys that they're counting on are where they should be or even greater than last year, Justin Upton, the 3 J's, right? We've talked about this on the podcast before. The 3 J's are key. The killer J's, baby. Verlander, Upton, Martinez. If their slash lines, stat lines, whatever you want to call them, if they're up to up to standards with what we expect, for those 3 guys in 2016, then I think the Tigers can really be on par with competing at a high rate, and maybe even exceeding expectations. And I think exceeding expectations based on the 27-1 odds that Vegas gives the Tigers as of right now to win the World Series. I think they're better than that, but maybe not much better. They got to prove something. Like I said, once again, those guys have to prove it consistently now. Martinez, a 3rd straight season of being really good. Top-notch, middle of the order impact bat. If he is where he hits around 40, if Verlander's healthy consistently throughout the entire season and wins 15-plus games, let's say, and pitches to the tune of an ERA of 3.5 or below, the Tigers then are looking pretty good, pretty terrific, actually, to be honest with you, on paper then. And Justin Upton, if he hits around what he did last year, and even does better than that, now takes a step forward. He put up 4.4 WAR last year. If he puts up 5 WAR, if JD does, if Verlander puts up, 4.5 WAR consistently over the course of the full season, those 3 J's doing that, man, that means the Tigers will probably, more than likely, exceed expectations. And obviously, for us as Tigers fans, and for all of us here in the state of Michigan that are Tigers fans, that is not a bad thing.
No, I agree 100%.
I'm glad you agree.
I agree with you, Vito. Great point. I think that the Tigers are going to play some meaningful games. I like the moves, and barring any significant injuries, and if we get Justin Verlander to pitch very well and consistent, then I do believe that we have a strong chance to have not only success in the division, but maybe in the postseason as well. And that's when we can maybe critique maybe a little bit more critically Brad Ausmus's moves in terms of can he get us there in the postseason, because you not only need a little bit of luck, you also need a little bit of in-game managerial tactics that'll get you to that next level. And we'll see this year. This is a big year for Brad, a huge year in terms of, hey, step up your game as well. You're going to expect your players to step up. You got to step up and get this team going, because right away, that schedule early on is not easy.
Better talent on this roster now than last year going into the season, so it's put up or shut up time. It really is. He has to turn around the ship. If he doesn't right the ship and turn it around, he's gone, and like I said, I could see him gone by All-Star break if the team is underachieving. I don't think Al Avila is messing around, and they have an interim now in place in the minors, in AAA manager Lloyd McClendon, who I was talking to some people in the Free Press about last night, working my shift as part of the Prep Sports crew, and they were talking about how one of the guys specifically, Tim, one of my buddies there, a copy editor at the Free, was saying that if Lloyd McClendon was a manager back in 2014, the Tigers might have fared better. Might have been better in that postseason series against the Baltimore Orioles. Because Ausmus didn't have the experience on his side, and McClendon was beloved, was known by the players. He was on Jim Leyland's coaching staff. And if he would have gotten that job instead of Ausmus, maybe the Tigers would have won a playoff series. Maybe would have made a deep run in the playoffs. They didn't do that, and largely because of Brad Ausmus and his lack of in-game management. So he cost the Tigers a little bit there. Last year wasn't all his fault, realistically. The team was depleted injury-wise, was flawed from top to bottom, realistically, and especially in the pitching staff, as we've noted many times here on Tigers Talk. So for me, it wasn't as much of a put-up-or-shut-up season last year. In Al Avila's first year, in Ausmus's last year of his 3-year contract, it is put-up-or-shut-up time, and I think it's smart to say, on the part of both of us, to say that his job is on the hot seat to start the season even. And maybe he's the manager with the hottest seat to start the season. Arguably, he is that to start the season there for himself in Motown. And I wanted to also say, I wanted to ask you, smart or dumb, I brought it up, wanted to ask you though now too, smart or dumb to say the Tigers are better off being underdogs going into 2016 with the current odds and how they've shaped up in Vegas? Are they better off being that underdog than being the guy that's been projected to win a lot of games in recent memory? Smart or dumb? I hope you're listening, Doc. You're really offending me. Sorry, you're the podfather. Smart or dumb to say the Tigers are better off being the underdog than being the over-the-top favorite, to win the AL Central in the past?
Now, my sincere apology, but we will let you in behind the curtain a little bit. As you were talking, I was listening, and I was formulating my thoughts. One, two, I was chatting with one of our sponsors, and I'm like, ooh, I like it juicy. The numbers come in at the beginning of the month, and I'm like, man, DSP, I love the team
some
here.
Good stuff, huh?
I have to just always say thanks to the crew here. We got a good crew. Thank you to all the retweets and stuff. And there's good stuff going on with the network, and I'm just so happy. And so I'm kind of multitasking.
I'm glad you got that plug in.
But now I'm
glad we did that.
I'm a little older, and it's a little bit harder to stay focused. So when I started talking, I lost that. But thank you for reiterating. It is smart to be the underdog. I like the fact that, when you have that little bit of extra motivation, maybe like the Broncos did in the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. I like that. I'm a psychologist, so that little extra element of human nature I kind of relate to and say, I was a former athlete, being that I played high school tennis. I know that Adam, when he listens to that, always chuckles.
Are you really an athlete? I thought it myself, honestly. You played tennis and you call yourself an athlete? No, those guys that play it at a high level.
Are you saying I didn't play? I don't
know. You played it in high school. I don't think the competition's that great.
Okay, now you get one guess. Where do you think I played? What was my position in tennis? I played singles. Where do you think I played?
I don't even know positions in tennis.
Oh, okay.
I have no idea, so I'm not going to...
a team is made up of 4 singles players and 4 doubles teams, and then you play, and then whoever wins the most matches in terms of competition wins. I was number 1 singles, baby, and I was pretty good.
Are you trying to brag right now, trying to tell me that you were this great high school tennis player, and that's why you're such an athlete?
I still am, because I have a perfect frame. I am a little shorter, so what made it challenging playing tennis was I'd get bombed off the court by 6-foot guys who could serve.
And better serve, faster serve.
But I modeled my game after like Michael Chang. I was speedy. I could get to most balls, and I was a hustler. So
Are you still speedy with that current frame?
Yeah.
Do you still get around, Doc?
You want to be letting behind the curtain a little more? I had a doctor's appointment today, and
I hope it went well.
And you know what the doctor told me? The doctor gave my doctor's great. She gave me a stern look, and she said, "Eat more vegetables, 30 minutes of exercise, 5 days a week." And she said, I gotta lose weight. So
eat less McDonald's.
So thanks for the Tim Hortons here.
Even though I got you the ice cap today to be nice. And now you probably shouldn't even be drinking that, huh?
No, I probably shouldn't. But
you can indulge. I mean, you can have some fun here and there and still drink what you want.
But
I guess.
To your point, smart. I like the fact to be underdogs. Gives them a little bit more motivation. I mean, it has been a little bit of, you could tell the Tigers are a little bit testy with the fans sometimes when we get on them.
Joe Nathan, right?
Some of them have been like, why are you guys booing? JV a little bit is like, and Victor Martinez has told the fans a little bit to pipe down and, not talk so much. But, the fans here in Detroit are smart and we're waiting. So I think they're going to have success, but I don't see World Series success. I see another step in the right direction. I just think
I agree. I think World Series.
We need that last manager. Get me that manager. Get me that Joe Madden, or get me that guy.
Give me the right manager. I don't think Ausmus is the right manager for the Tigers going forward. And with that, we'll take a quick commercial break here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. And when we get back, I will have on my guest, a book author by the name of Doug Wilson, who wrote a great biography on Mark the Bird Fidrych, titled The Bird, The Life and Legacy of Mark Fidrych. We'll be right back. Looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or corporation? Look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street in downtown Royal Oak between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan quarterback John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the highest quality and also the very best service. Get your organization, your school, or club team all in with Adidas today by going online to TopCatTeamSales.com. Once again, that website is TopCatTeamSales.com. Also, remember to follow Top Cat Sales on Twitter at Team Top Cat. And now joining me on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company is author Doug Wilson of a biography on Mark the Bird Fidrych called The Bird, The Life and Legacy of Mark Fidrych. Doug, how are you doing today?
Oh, pretty good. Thanks for inviting me.
Hey, thanks for coming on with me today here on Tigers Talk. And Doug, let's start off by touching upon Fidrych's rookie campaign, and specifically June 28th, 1976, synonymous with the coming out party of the Bird on the national stage when he pitched against the New York Yankees. And he was dominant that night, as you know, Doug. A one-run, complete game performance against the Yanks, who were a dominant ball club at that time. Now, from what you heard from people that you interviewed regarding that game, what did they say that game, that night, meant to Mark the Bird Fidrych?
Well, I think it meant everything as far as his legend goes. Again, back then, people didn't really see a lot of national TV games, and the people of Detroit knew what was going on with Mark Fidrych. For the past month, he had been building up a good record and winning games and bringing people out to the park, but around the country, people hadn't seen him yet. And so that was, like you said, his coming out party, and he played the role perfect. He just was being himself, did everything he normally did, and it was just amazing for the TV audience to see how he played, how he performed, and the reaction of the crowd, to see the sellout stadium going crazy. Really, nobody had ever seen anything like that in a baseball field, especially for a meaningless midseason game, and it just took the country by storm.
And, Doug, speaking of never seeing anything like it, how about those antics, too, of Mark the Bird Fidrych on the mound, where he would talk to himself, talk to the baseball. He would reach down and, wax the mound, put it together and manicure it. He was so unique in his antics and whatnot. And touch on that and what you learned from people that you interviewed regarding those antics of his and how they developed for Mark Fidrych.
Yeah, well, that's really what caught everybody's attention. Of course, he was a great pitcher. He had to have the skill to back it up, but what really made the big show was what he did out there and how he did it. And like you mentioned, always moving, always talking. They said he was talking to the ball, and the ball seemed to be listening because it was going where he wanted it to. It was getting down on his hands and knees and grooming the mound, and he just had so much enthusiasm, always running around the field with a huge smile on his face, shaking hands with guys after they made routine plays. He shook hands with the umpires and the grounds crew after the game. But looking back at his history and talking to guys who grew up with him, that's just the way he had always been. He was just always a guy who had an incredible amount of energy and enthusiasm for anything that he did. And he acted that way in Little League. The guys that grew up with him didn't make a big deal of it because they said that's just Mark being Mark. But really where it all came from was his father started a lot of that, because when Mark was little, he would have been labeled as attention deficit. He was just a guy who couldn't keep still, always had something going on. And his dad was a school teacher, and he recognized this, and he recognized that his son had a lot of talent for baseball. And so he incorporated a lot of these things as part of the routine to help Mark keep focused. And when he was moving his lips, he was telling himself the situation, to keep the ball down, to keep his arm motion right, and the thing with the mound. And he just helped his son incorporate these into a routine that he did over and over, and that helped keep him focused on the field.
And those mannerisms that, we've touched on, his unique ways, it made him the Bird, gave him that distinction of being noted as the Bird. And it happened early on in the minors for him, from a minor league assistant coach back when he was playing in rookie ball by the name of Jeff Hogan. Touch on that story a little bit, too, for us today here on the podcast.
Yeah, Mark's first day at practice on a rookie Class A team, and nobody really knew him. Nobody knew had heard anything about him. They didn't know what they were getting. And all of a sudden they looked, and here's this tall, lanky guy constantly squawking, running all over the field, all the big curly blonde hair hanging out of his hat. And the coach looked at him and said, "Geez, this is Big Bird out here," and called him the Bird, and the name just stuck. And all through the minors, everybody in the minors just knew him as Bird, and they didn't make a big deal of it. And then when he hit the majors and did the same routine, though, that was pretty unusual, and then it was a big deal.
And now, with that nickname, him being known by that for so long, what did he actually think of it? From all the people that you interviewed and talked to, what did he think of being referred to as the Bird?
Well, I think he embraced it. And again, he was a guy who had absolutely no pretense, no guile. I mean, he just was what he was. He was a genuine guy, and he was a guy who liked to have a good time. And he realized that this nickname was helping his appeal and bringing people out to the park, and he was smart enough to go with it. And, like you said, he just embraced it.
And then from being this guy that was so not about being, the cocky guy, he was so not about all that. He was much more, as we've, talked about in the past, as you noted in your biography on Fidrych, he was so humble, so personable. But he never dealt with any of the fame, going into his rookie campaign in 76 with the Tigers. And then he had to deal with all of it, all of a sudden, as a 21-year-old, Doug. 2 years after he had been drafted by the Tigers in the 10th round of the 1974 amateur draft. So from his small beginnings, his humble beginnings to that, how did he deal with all that fame as a 21-year-old in 1976?
Well, again, I don't think he ever truly appreciated how big he was getting. At the first month, he was just a guy who was trying to make the team and trying to stay on the team, and he was focusing on baseball, kind of oblivious to what was building up around him, all the hoopla. And he actually told a lot of people, "I don't even know what I do out there." He was doing some of the mannerisms he had always done. He had no idea that people were making such a big deal of it. And then once it started building up, of course, he kept doing it because he knew that was part of the show. That's what people wanted to see. And again, he wanted to have everybody to have a good time out there, and he realized that was increasing his appeal.
And he had the great 1976 season. And then in 77, he got hurt in spring training and then obviously against Baltimore in a start where his arm didn't feel the same, ended up being a torn rotator cuff. It was revealed, though, a long time after the fact in 1985. So from all that time, from 77 onward, he had to deal with the toll of physical ailments. Now, what was that like for Fidrych? How did he deal with all of that? And how big of a toll was it on him, both physically and also mentally?
Well, physically the problem was pretty straightforward. He couldn't throw the way he always had. He lost his control, he lost his velocity, and he just wasn't a quality major league pitcher anymore. And so and again, nobody knew what was going on because they didn't have the technology then to do MRIs and diagnose it. And like you said, it really wasn't diagnosed till he had been out of baseball several years. This is torn rotator cuff. So he tried for 5 years, trying to make comebacks, trying any kind of rehab, exercise, anything he could do, but the problem was a torn rotator cuff, so really nothing he did would have helped. But the biggest thing was the mental strain, because he had been so big and caused so much fun at the ballpark, everybody wanted more of that, and when he couldn't deliver, he had to listen to all the press saying that, he was a guy that was a flash in the pan, it went to his head. Because he had so much fun, rumors were that he didn't take care of himself, which was as far from the truth as possible, because he was one of the hardest working guys on any team. But that was a really big strain, and he actually made a comment in 1985 after it was diagnosed and was treated by Dr. James Andrews. He said, "Well, now I know that I'm not crazy. I had this real diagnosis all along." And so, but it was really tough for him trying to endure that for 5 or 6 years.
Doug, what do you think could have been for the Bird? What could have happened? How good of a pitcher could he have been over the long term? And could he have been potentially a once-in-a-lifetime, one of the greatest of his decade, of his era in baseball, of major league pitchers, if he could have stayed healthy?
Yeah, you can always speculate, but, all you can say as a fact is, he led the league in ERA as a rookie, 2.34, and he was pitching better when he came back the first half of 77, he was doing better than he had been his rookie year before he got hurt. And so, he was a guy who had a phenomenal ability. And the two things that really made him as a pitcher, he had just unbelievable control. He could put the ball exactly where he wanted every time, and just a huge amount of movement. His fastball and slider just moved so much that guys never had a chance. People would just beat it into the ground. And so, there's no reason to suspect if he hadn't had any injuries, he could have had a 15-year career and, gone down as one of the great ones. He was certainly one of the greatest box office draws in baseball history, even just for the short time he was there.
And really that segues into my next question here to end our interview today, Doug. His legacy, what was it to baseball fans all over the land?
Yeah, the biggest legacy on the baseball field was his box office draw and appeal. His rookie season, he drew 960,000 people, and he only had 29 starts. And that includes the first month when nobody knew who he was. So every single time he went out, it was a full house. He outdrew 3 teams as a rookie and just playing 29 games. And so, that the first part of his legacy is just what a fun atmosphere he created and brought people out to the ballpark. But the other thing I think was pretty neat about the Mark Fidrych story is after he retired from baseball, there was no bitterness, and he never, said, what if this would have happened. He went back to his small hometown and was basically a blue-collar worker. He had a dump truck, he had a farm, got up at 5 every morning and went to work. But he was never hesitated to put on his old uniform and go be the bird for charities, and particularly children's charities. He was really active in those around his area. And he was one of the only guys that never charged for an autograph. He just enjoyed people, enjoyed being out in the crowd.
He was a great charitable man, a humble, friendly man as well, that everybody knew for his charisma on and off the baseball diamond. And that's why his legacy will never be forgotten, Doug. And I wanted to leave with this. Give me the info about your book and where we can find it then. How can we buy your book? Online and maybe at some bookstores around the nation too, Doug.
It's always available online at Amazon. It came out in paperback last year, and so certainly most bookstores in Michigan should have it on their shelves. If they don't, just tell them to get it. They should get it.
Because they need to. They really need to, Doug.
It's a great story for the next generation. Everybody needs to remember who he was and what he did.
Yeah, people need to know who Mark the Bird Fidrych was and what he meant to the nation and what he meant to so many baseball fans and especially Tigers fans all over the place. And Doug, with that, thank you for making this interview today, for writing the book too, and giving attention to this guy and what he meant, expressing what he meant to so many people through your biography too, Doug. Thank you very much, and you have a great one, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, thanks again.
And back now here after that great segment with Doug Wilson of The Bird, The Life and Legacy of Mark Fidrych. Great stuff from him today about the Bird, about his life and legacy. Plain and simple, it was all about that and about his career and how it was standoutish as a rookie for Fidrych in 1976, made a name for himself with his antics on the mound, and a great person, a humble individual, friendly, personable man on and off the field that we lost way too soon there in April of 2009. Tragedy, an accident, freak accident when he died, working on a dump truck in where he was living there, small town in Massachusetts, Northborough, I believe, a small farm town though, and doing what he loved to do, working on cars, was known as a guy that would do that in his spare time, and then also a guy who loved just being relegated to that small life, to that small town kind of life. Even though he became a big name, a phenom as a rookie, he loved doing what he did there in that small town in Massachusetts.
Now, if you want to buy that book again, for those that didn't catch that, where can they buy this great book?
They can buy this book from Doug Wilson, the author of The Bird, The Life and Legacy of Mark Fidrych, on Amazon.com, and then you can actually buy it through DetroitSportsPodcast.com. You click on, now Doc, tell us.
Click through the Amazon banner.
Yep.
They kick us back a little something, and it helps promote, those authors out there, and helps promote the Detroit Sports Podcast. So if you want to buy a book, it's a great price. I think it's $9.99 on Amazon.
Cheap enough. It's worth it. You know what? It's a great biography, and there's no other biography out there that is as well-renowned and just really focuses, specifically a biography that focuses on the career and life of Mark the Bird Fidrych, who had a great life, great career that was cut short, though. Cut short prematurely. It was a tragedy to see how his career ended. If there would have been the current advanced, stuff that we have now with surgeries and whatnot, Dr. James Andrews, if he would have known, they would have found out that he had a torn rotator cuff back when he was still in his prime, let's say, before 1980. If they would have known what it was and operated on his shoulder, to repair that torn rotator cuff back in 78, let's say, he would have been maybe healed and been a great pitcher for another 5 years. So too bad his career was cut short because they didn't know what it was. They didn't detect it, and there wasn't the current, there's been so many advancements, in all that since, and there wasn't that around. There wasn't that at that point, and then he would have been paid handsomely after his first year. And even in 77, before he got hurt with the arm injury, and then really after that, he came back in 78, but he dealt with injury after that constantly, and pitched again in 79 a little bit, and 80 again, made one last comeback attempt, and that was it for Mark the Bird Fidrych. Sadly, but true. His career cut too short, Doc.
Yeah, now, before we get out of here, this has been another fine podcast, man. I'm really happy that you really go out there and get guests, great authors that can give us a little bit of insight, not only in terms of the current Tigers, but the past Tigers as well. And that interview with Doug Wilson was really cool, and that was really, really neat. Now, before we get out of here, though, some news and notes regarding spring training, and I want to get your opinion on it because, there's something interesting outside of the game of baseball. The Tigers released what they're actually going to look like in spring training, and they released what their hats are going to look like, and I'm not a big fan. I look at this bright orange hat, and I'll have you take a look here, and a lot of the information I go to DetroitNews.com and the Detroit Free Press.
Oh, better be the Detroit Free Press, too. Come
always.
on now. Yeah, always now. You better say that, yeah.
Exactly. You had some great work. We'll talk about that maybe to close it out, too. But they are going to don these bright orange hats in the outfield, and they're going to don
And they pop out at you. Like it says in that headline.
Yeah, they're going to don these bright orange hats in spring training, and I'm like, I'm not really a fan. I think they're kind of hideous. I don't like the bright color. I'm just traditional. Black hat with a white Old English D is all you need. I know you want to spruce things up, maybe get some additional sales in terms of revenue like that online, stuff like that, but the bright orange hats, I'm not really a fan of at all.
Yeah, give me the traditional colors with the Old English D, and that's all I want. I don't want it popping out at me, darting out at my eyes, with that orange flavor. A little bit too much orange there for me, for my liking. But, I'm not big into decor or what a uniform looks like or what a hat looks like. But for me, it's not, to include the segment here, Smart or Dumb, let's go into that really quick. I always have to include that now here on Tigers Talk. Smart or Dumb with those hats, for the Tigers to be wearing those in spring training. I think, not smart, but really not dumb either, because it's just spring training. They're trying out something. It's kind of a cool initiative to take, to try something new, and for spring training, maybe the fans will like it. But really, it doesn't really do the fans or the players too much service. I don't think it does a lot. And I think it's more too much going on with the orange than anything. But still, a spring training, so I won't say that it was smart or dumb, really, for the team to include those hats as part of the spring training look for the players.
Okay, so good. I'm glad we agree. So in terms of the bright orange hats, thumbs down.
Bright orange, a no-go, correct. We're done with those. Moving on, Doc. What else do you have for me? And then I wanted to touch on Cam Newton a little bit, too, and include a Smart or Dumb segment on him and what he did in the Super Bowl.
Well, I wanted to give you credit because, you've done a lot of things rather quickly now, and you said this is the 29th episode?
Episode 28.
28.
Get it right. Man. Come on now. We're going so fast though here. We're almost on episode 30. I mean, it's almost here already, Doc.
Exactly. So I want to give you a lot of credit. You've had, 29 great podcasts. You've got a lot of great guests already lined up, a lot of authors, reporters in town, and things like that. And then the great thing was now you're also, doing some contributions for the Free Press, and your writing that you did for signing day. Now, I know the other schools didn't do like signing with the stars and things like that, that happened last week, but you were able to be on the forefront and be able to, contribute in terms of looking at the recruiting process. Was it for Eastern, Western, Central?
Eastern, Western, CMU, so all the non-big Michigan D1 schools, but still.
They were very thorough, detailed, and you put them out, and I just wanted to get your little insight into what you did there, how you put that together, and some of the feedback that you got, because I was like, you know what, when you really think about it, Adam and I just started a project to do podcasting, and to say that we have someone on staff that's a writer, that's actually doing stuff with the Detroit Free Press, whatever your opinions are regarding the papers in town and print journalism, stuff like that, it's still a big deal. And I don't want to ever discount the fact that there's great writers out there and you're doing good stuff and you're part of the team. So that was really cool. What was that like?
Well, I write for the Free Press, so you better read it all the time. Yes. Okay, and episode number 28. You said episode number 29 again. That we have 29 episodes done. You're almost on the mark there, Doc. But I'll let it slide because you have so many other podcasts that you do and help out with as well. And you're getting older.
Yeah.
You're not that old, okay? So all joking aside, you're great. And what I'm doing now for the Free Press is contributing some prep sports stuff and a little bit of freelancing, as I did for signing day, contributing 3 pieces, one on CMU, one on EMU, and one on Western Michigan's recruiting class. So 3 recruiting classes and stories that I did for the Free as part of their national signing day coverage. And as part of that signing day coverage, I got to interview all 3 head coaches. So the CMU head man, John Bonamago, EMU's head man, Chris Creighton, and Western Michigan's big name head coach, now PJ Fleck. So we rode the boat together there, talking to him for about 10 minutes with each coach before I wrote the piece, submitted it or filed it as it's called in print media. So I filed those stories, and all of them were filed, I would say, by 6 o'clock at the latest. So I was done. My day was done with those 3 stories by that time, but hey, it took a lot out of me, and it was a lot of research and about the recruits and where they came from and who were the biggest ones and the ones that the coaches were most excited about. So I got to talk about the sleepers, the biggest catch as it was labeled in the Free Press for each program as well on signing day. So doing that, and it went well. It went well last Wednesday. It was very exciting, a very good initiative, for me to take, opportunity for me to be part of, and
what was the response?
It went well. It went well. It was a good response as well. The response was very good from my Free higher-ups.
Not only that, they tripled you up, man. You got 3 articles in 1 day.
3 in 1 day in 1 paper. So that was cool seeing my name in the paper 3 times, for 3 different pieces the following day. So that went well, and let's talk about something that didn't go well. Not about me, not about you, but about the Super Bowl and Cam Newton. The Super Bowl 50 did not go well for him. His performance was very subpar, Doc. And I wanted to ask you, smart or dumb? First, with him not going for that fumble late in the game in the 4th quarter. Didn't want to extend his body to reach for that fumble when it was lying on the ground right there in front of him. He's a big body. Took a lot of hits before that, was forced and pressured like 20 times prior to that. I think a record amount or one of the highest amounts of a quarterback being pressured in Super Bowl history. But still, the game's on the line, man. You got a chance to maybe come back to tie it up at least, right? And the ball's right there for your taking. Didn't even dive for it. A sad lack of effort, and very shocking, Doc. Smart or dumb for him to do that. I think very dumb he didn't dive on it to try and get that ball.
It's very dumb for him not to do that. But it's one of those things too where dude's got size. Why not?
It's not you, right? It's not me going into that pile and getting killed by those big linemen.
It's one of those things where you would think in the biggest game of the year, biggest game that you might ever play in, you would go all out and sell out, even at the risk of your own career. I would risk my career if it's at that game for that moment. Yeah, you do it. You go in there head first, dive for the ball, and I think that's what you're taught instinctually. I thought that when you play football and the ball's on the ground, you're in it even if you're the quarterback, especially when you see it all the time. You see quarterbacks fumble the ball, they're right there in it trying to, and the linemen are easy. They just kind of shoo them away, but they try to get in there and mix it up. It was not a good look, but in the end, Denver's defense played the best, and Cam Newton and Carolina didn't, and that was the factor. Too many mistakes, too many turnovers.
Way too many, like 5?
Yeah, too many.
Overall, and he tippy-toed on that football when it was loose on the ground, and your instinct is to go for it, and it's the biggest game of your career. Maybe the only time you get to the Super Bowl. And you didn't dive for it? Thumbs down, dumb. Definitely, we both agree on that. Now, one other smarter dumb here about the Super Bowl and Cam Newton. In the press conference after the game, he didn't really answer any questions. His head was down. He was somber. But he deserved to be somber, right? But still, his response, his showing of really being a bad sport or a sore loser, I think was sad for the NFL. Wasn't it a little bit? Because you know what? I know you feel bad, but you're the role model, the MVP of the league, and you do that. You show that lack of not passion, but that much poor sportsmanship,
Listen,
you can't be a sore loser like that.
Yes, he came out earlier on Tuesday and said that he's a sore loser, and he
did. He admitted that, which is good. I mean, hey, be upfront about it, right? If you are, you are. You are what you are.
And it's a tough thing, It's tough for us to put ourselves in his shoes. I try to as a psychologist because I have my opinions, and the first thing you do as a psychologist is say, don't be judgmental. Try to put yourself in your patient's shoes and understand. And I can understand it a little bit. Your adrenaline's rushing. And also, too, news came out that, right, the way the setup is ridiculous. You have a bunch of speakers blaring and all these different athletes on different teams from the Carolina and Broncos sitting there. And he's sitting there listening to, I believe, Chris Harris Jr. from Denver blasting him and saying that, basically saying, right to his face, right next to him, saying, hey, we knew Cam wasn't going to beat us. We knew that our strategy was to make Cam Newton beat us, and he couldn't do it. And he's sitting there frustrated. He's sitting there getting asked really kind of slow and ridiculous questions by the media. And he just said, you know what, it's too much, and he bounced. He should have just said, you know what, I'm going to work hard next year. We're going to come back. See ya. Just don't even let them fire off a bunch of questions, a couple comments, and bust out. It's not a good look, but I understand it. He was passionate. He lost one of the biggest games that he might ever play in. And it's one of those things where if an athlete doesn't want to talk to the media always gets mad at that. But I agree. If you don't want to talk, don't send him out there. That's the biggest thing.
You have to be up there. He's a role model, the MVP of the league. The MVP is going to be wanted to talk to. I mean, people desire to talk to that guy after the game. So he had to answer questions. He had to give at least short responses. He should have given at least the short responses.
The good thing is, I know you're in the media. You want to get your stuff on deadline. But if I'm
you're
an
on
athlete,
deadline. You are. That's a good point,
right.
Doc.
If I'm an athlete, I say, listen, you know what? If the fine's $2,000 for that, I'll pay you double. Give it to charity. Fine. I'm not going to come. See me on Tuesday. I'll calm down. I'll get with the people who will write down, what to say properly for the fumble, what to say properly for the lack of absence at the post game. I'm calmed down. I'd be like, man, sorry, fellas. I was too much. It was overwhelming. I was very heated, and I lost a game that was passionate. What do you got? And then you start answering the questions later, 3 days later.
But you got to be up there still.
No, you don't.
At the podium.
You don't
give at least 5 minutes. How much longer is 5 minutes? Not much longer than a minute. He should have been up there to answer a few questions, giving, short responses. Doesn't have to elaborate. I know you're in a bad mood. You just lost, but you can't be a sore loser either and display that to your fans. To these kids growing up who view Cam Newton as a role model. What does that teach them? To be a sore loser? You shouldn't be a sore loser. In that moment, you feel bad. We don't know what he felt like totally, as we've never been in his shoes. I get that too.
But doesn't a sore loser make a great champion? Someone that hates to lose might push him up to be a great champion?
You want to hate to lose, but do you show it like that, display it to that degree? I think he displayed it too much, the sore loser mentality.
Vito, what people do is they just tell themselves, okay, this is how he should act. And because he didn't act that way, then he's a bad guy. He didn't act that way.
Not a bad guy. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm saying in the moment, he didn't act the way he maybe should have. But you know what? In the moment, you can't totally, with all that going on, I know you can't totally control it. And we've never been in that moment. We don't know what was going through his head.
Because he didn't act that way, he's not a bad guy. Could you argue he made a mistake? Yeah. Did it happen? I think it's overblown. I think the more focus should be on the football on the field. He should be getting killed definitely for not jumping on that football in the game. Whatever happens in the press conferences, Vito, you know and I know, it's more oftentimes than not scripted. They're coached up. There's not a lot of athletes nowadays. There still are. Not a lot of athletes that are real with you.
Not a lot of authentic takes and not a lot of responses. Yeah,
no, because the athletes are coached up. I'm a fan of real sports. And Bill O'Brien, in a meeting, and I think all teams now do it, was coaching the guys on what to say to the media and role-playing with them. In a scene in real sports, he's like, what do you think about this player? He was talking to the guys in a meeting, and he's like, asking two players, tell me your opinion on the other player. And he was like, no, you say this. And he kind of put out there that the media is the enemy, which is being taught to these players. So
it's being implanted right in their heads.
That the media is the enemy, so they're not going into it wanting to talk. There's very few athletes that just want to talk to the media. I would be a guy that would get in trouble for being a little bit too silly and getting talked to and being a little bit too sarcastic or getting my information taken the wrong way, because I would have fun with it. I actually kind of would like it to have some people ask me some questions after a game, but I would just make them wait 20 minutes. Just give me 20 minutes. Let me shower. Let me get fresh. Let me put on my pimp suit, and I'll spend all day with you. Just give me some time. 5 minutes after a game or 10 minutes after a game after I lost, it's not enough time.
Yeah, you're saying the loss was too fresh.
I'm saying somebody in the NFL needs to up that cool down period to 35 minutes and tell the papers, extend your damn deadlines. Who cares? If you want good stuff, the paper wants good stuff. So if you want it, give the players a little bit more on their terms. Maybe you might get 10% more willingness from these athletes to talk.
I still have a problem with this. He should have stayed up there.
Vito wants you to answer his question so he can get it on the deadline.
Should have stayed up there for like 5 minutes. Answered a few questions, more than what he gave in the time that he gave. It wasn't good enough for me in terms of that. But the bigger issue is not going for that fumble. That is a bigger issue. You are right in terms of that. So, Doc, I'll end it at that today for the podcast episode. Get it right here. Number 28, Doc. 28 of Tiger Talk with Chirco and Company. Next week, next Wednesday, episode number 29 will be released. And hosted, as usual, courtesy of DetroitSportsNation.com and always under the umbrella of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Thanks to both. Thanks to Doug Wilson, and everybody else who tunes in.
Yes, and where can people find your great work, Vito?
At Vito Jerome on Twitter, at DetroitAthleticCompany.com, part of their blog. I have a good, interesting, in-depth piece on Mark the Bird Fidrych, and I actually interviewed Doug Wilson for that piece, so see some of his anecdotes in that piece as well for Detroit Athletic Company this week or next week. And for everybody here at Detroit Sports Podcast, the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, and Tigers Talk, thank you for listening in, and have a great week, and we'll talk to you again next Wednesday for episode number 29.